So this will be exercise 8. Is that correct, everyone? Exercise 8. And I'm showing you how to do clipping mask and quick mask. So we've already done a layer mask. And those are the 3 most important types of masks in Photoshop. In order to do this, you're going to have to choose one of these line drawings or part of it. You can make a crop of it if you think it's too much for you to do. So there's the first one. Here's the second. Now this is very complex, this one. So as I said, you can crop these if you want. You can open them in Photoshop and crop them a bit. I'll do one for you. Maybe I'll take this one just because this one's a little bit easier. I actually suggest doing this one. So I put all 4 in just so that you can choose. I like to give you choices. So they're numbered 1, line drawing 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I'm going to choose this one, and you can open it as well. This is actually lines 1. So I'm opening it in Photoshop just by dragging it or right-clicking on it. Whoops, I don't want to do that. And it comes into Photoshop as a background layer. And it has a white background right now. I think 1 or 2 of them are transparent, have a transparent background. So you could then more easily dump a color into it. And I think I wanted to make them, oh no, you know what it is? I made them into JPEGs. And maybe I should have kept them as TIFFs. Interesting, yeah. So, so that you could put a background color in more easily. If you double click on the background layer, it'll become layer 0, which is what we want, which is good. And if you want to put a background color, one thing you could do is take out the white right away by simply clicking on the white with the magic wand tool. And it should select all of the white, and you could delete the white and get the background to be transparent again. And then you could put in a new layer, pull that underneath, and if you want, you can put a color later into that bottom layer. What I wanted to show you, and it's probably important that you do that step where you take out the white background, is, and I'm going to deselect now. So I took out the white background, and deselect, and now we just have the lines. Is that I want you to work with the background colors, making background colors in the objects, perhaps background colors in the whole thing, eventually, a background color, and also a clipping mask on the lines. So right now we have transparent background, and maybe I'll go through the JPEGs, or you just do this step where you take out the white. And you're gonna save this as a PSD, a Photoshop document for me so I can see your layers, and you don't even have to, or save it as a PDF with layers, but I need to see your layers, so you might as well just hand it in as a Photoshop document. So the way that you can paint lines is to put a clipping mask on them. And this might be useful to you in parts of your collage that you're doing. So, but it does say in the syllabus that I'll teach you the different ways of masking in Photoshop. So that's what I'm doing. So I want you to do fills and you're painting fills in these objects, filling areas, and also doing painting the lines. So how do you just paint the lines? Well, there's such a thing as a clipping mask. So on the line layer, I'm going to call this lines. That layer, I called it lines. This you could say background color if you wanted. And then I'm going to make some other layers for instance, fills. So I'll put that on top of the lines. And if you click on an area with the magic wand, you should be able to, and you have to go to the control above and keep sample all layers, but click on contiguous. And if you click on contiguous, Command D is deselect. You can also go up to select, deselect when you have a selection that you don't want anymore. And in fact, if there's any selection on your piece, you won't be able to work with the rest of it. So sometimes when you can't do something, you might check that you don't have something else selected, because it won't let you work on any part of the piece except the part that's selected in Photoshop. So let's say I want to fill this shape right here. I'm going to go in on it to show you what I did. I just took the magic wand and I selected this area that's bounded by black. So I can put a color in. Now, in this piece, I'm going to let you use whatever colors you like, but it would be nice if you kept in mind some of the color principles I've been talking about. So for instance, maybe you want to do a piece that's very abrasive. So you pick complementary colors such as violet and yellow. Or you want to make a piece that's more pleasing. So you try to think of some principles that we've been talking about to include in this piece. So if I wanted to make it all of the fills, for instance, I'm going to make the background yellow. And then the objects are all going to be warmer colors, such as in the red range. So red, violet, those colors. So I'm going to, and I'm thinking about that ahead of time, so I have some kind of congruence to this. And you can pick a color in the color picker. I'm not so concerned with this painting that you stay with swatches, or if you want to use the swatches, use the colors that you're making again and again, you can save them into a group. So new swatch preset, or you can start a new swatch group. And I picked a magenta. So I'm going to do some selecting of shapes and dump the color into those shapes, just because I'm demonstrating how I want you to do this particular exercise. Now I go out and I can keep working on this by using the magic wand to select areas that are bounded by black. So, and the paint bucket dumps colors into selections. So you can go through this, and any time that you can make a selection, you can dump a color into it. Here, for instance. Now, when you have a selection, I'm going to pick on purpose in a minute, that it's not always easy to, whoops, there, for instance. I didn't really want this whole thing to select. So I'm going to do Command Z, and in a minute I'm going to show you what you can do about that. Or maybe I'll show you right now. So what happens, all I wanted was this object, okay, selected. So I'm going to zoom out here. The first thing I'm demonstrating then is what's called quick mask. And I don't think I've shown you that yet. So I want this little cork, I think it was a cork, to be selected. But when I clicked on it with my magic wand, it leaked. There was a little area that leaked. So how do you isolate that area so that it, so that you can just fill that area? There's something called quick mask, and it's underneath your foreground and background colors. So when you do quick mask and click on it, you toggle in and out of quick mask. It's a toggle. So Command 0. So what quick mask does is it shows you everything that's selected versus things that are masked. And in this case, when I double click on quick mask, double click, what you see, this is the default. The masked areas are going to be in red, 50% red. And that comes from the Rubelith function that I think copy cameras had a long time ago. They used to do copy camera work for magazines where they would expose parts of a plate to be developed. And they did it with this stuff called Rubelith, which was a transparent film that they put on top of plates. Why would it have to be transparent? Because they wanted to be able to see what was underneath to cut the mask, which was protecting certain areas of the plate. And that's how this works. So the red area, I'm going to show you what go out of it again. The red area are the masked areas, and the white area is the selected area. So I clicked on the cork because that's all that I wanted selected. But what happened was, I'll go back into my quick mask. What happened was it leaked. So it actually selected lots of different areas here. But what quick mask enables you to do is paint out or paint over the areas that you don't want. So remember that when I showed you layer mask, I said white adds to the selection and black takes away from the selection. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So white adds to the selection, black takes away from the selection. So whenever you're painting into a mask, remember that. White adds, black takes away. So right now, what do we want to do? Add to it or take away from the selection? Take away, that's correct. Hold on 1 second, I'm gonna give her some milk so she stops meowing. Come here, where are you?
So all we have to do for this exercise is to just something has to do with recolor lines, maybe.
No, we're going to, she wants us to fill in these shapes, but she's showing us how to use the quick select and the quick mask to make sure we don't get leakage. She wanted to fill in that cork down there at the bottom, but there was a gap in the black line, so there wasn't a complete container. So you could take the quick mask and paint in that area, so only that selection. is going to be filled in.
I have one more thing. So quick mask is the one at the bottom left, right?
Very bottom. Okay, let me go on and you can try it in a little while. So, as I said, what Felicia answered correctly, you're trying to paint out the white areas. So, you go to the paintbrush and you don't look down here. You don't want to paint with white because you're not adding to the selection. You're trying to take away from the selection. So you toggle, hit the X, or go to the little arrow above the foreground and background because it's white and black, and reverse that. So now you are going to be painting out the selection with the mask. So it's going to paint in, it should paint in the same opacity red that you have, that you see in front of you. Notice that I have my opacity up here very low. So I don't want that. I want it to be 100%. When you paint in quick mask, it should be 100% when you're covering up the mask. Otherwise, this is going to actually be transparent. And you want to make a normal mode when you paint, and you want it to be a hard edge brush because you want to control exactly, you don't want it to be fuzzy edged. So I'm going to make my brush bigger again, and I'm going to paint out. And you can use a really large brush even. So I'm going to the forwards brackets, and I'm going to just paint out everything that isn't what I wanted selected. Now notice that actually I have to make my whole painting, my whole piece a little bit smaller so I can get to the edges of it here, down here. So I'm painting with the black color into the mask. It's called quick mask.
Quick mask.
And notice that I'm painting everything as close as I can get. Now I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller so that I can paint right up close. And in fact, usually to do this, you need to zoom in a bit. I'm losing I lost my cursor actually. I lost my, hey. So I'm doing this with a mouse, but you should really do it with your Wacom if you've managed to get a hold of them. So now you notice that I have the little area that I wanted selected in the first place, and I painted it in with the quick mask. So I'm going to toggle out again of the quick mask. So you just hit the quick mask button again. And now when I zoom in, notice here that we can see the marching ants, the selection. And when I dump color in this time with the paint bucket, and I should still have that pink selected that I wanted. So now I'm able to select it to fill it, because I used the quick mask to paint out or paint over to mask everything that I didn't want. Does that make sense? So you can go through this and do that on everything that you know, if you can't get it selected with the use of the magic wand. So the magic wand selects everything. Like in this case, now I'm going to switch to a slightly different color. I'm just going to use my colors in my palette. I did save this one, so why don't you save some? I'm going to use some reds in the objects, and so most of the objects I've decided are going to be red. So you can do this quite quickly, decide on a really simple palette for yourself. So I'm dumping color in with the paint bucket, okay, and I'm selecting with the magic wand. So then now I've selected this round object, and I'm going to go to my paint bucket. So if you want to do it with me, I'm going to make a new swatch every time I pick a color so that there's some coordination going on. And notice that I'm just going through, and all my objects are going to be in the reds. So I'm going to select and keep going, keep going, keep going. So I'm selecting with the magic wand, pick another object here. I'm going to make it that reddish color. So you dump the color in with the paint bucket. And a lot of these are closed objects, so I actually can do it pretty easily. So pick one of the drawings that has a lot of closed objects in it so that you can do this. Some of the pieces are more difficult. You can shift click. You should be able to get multiple selection. So let's say I pick another orange color that I want to use in the foreground. Some of my foreground colors, I'll pick a sort of salmon color and save it. So I go up to the top of the swatches palette and say new swatch presets, and it keeps adding them. They keep being added down here or up here, right up here, I guess is where it's adding them. In any case, you got to keep an eye on where it's adding them so you can, oh, I can't, where did I, I don't know where I just selected there. Oh, there it is. So, so you can do multiple selection, but you still have to, you can't, it won't put color in anything that you don't have selected. So it needs to be selected. So if you hold shift, it adds to the selection. So you can do multiple selections by holding shift in different areas. And dumping color in with the paint bucket. Right there. So I'm going to go through this and I'll keep working on it in front of you. So areas, I want you to try that. I want you to use the magic wand to select areas and fill with the paint bucket. And then paint out. If you get too large a selection because your black line leaked, in other words, it wasn't a closed area, completely closed, you have to paint out, and then you can practice using the quick mask. Now, another thing that you can do for this is go to on top of the line layer, and you might say, this is going to look pretty cool. I'll put a really interesting background color in. Like I said, it was going to be a yellow, a golden yellow, the whole background. So I can put that into this layer. And I'll do that at the end so you can see what it looks like. But on the line layer, you don't have to leave all the lines black. You can very easily paint the lines. How do you do it? Well, if you have some black lines in a painting, and the black lines are isolated on their own layer, you can put a clipping mask on top of that layer. You want to make a new layer and have it be right on top. So remember that every time you go to a layer and make a new layer, if you're on that layer, the new layer will come in right above it. So you have to be on the layer and make a new layer, say new layer. And you can do that at the button, or you can do it on top. under new layer. In the drop-down menu, in the layers palette, there's a new layer command. New layer right at top. Do you see it? Right at the top, there's a new layer command. Or you can go to the button right at the bottom, and it's a plus button, and it says make a new layer. We've talked about that previously. So I made a new layer right on top of the black lines, and I have them identified as lines. And I saw in a lot of your landscapes that you had lines on a separate layer, which is a good way to do it. I said keep those lines separate. So how would you color those lines only? Make a new layer and then go in the drop down, say create clipping mask. There it is, create clipping mask, 2/3 of the way down in the layers drop down menu. So notice that it has a little arrow that shows that it's clipped to the line layer. Now watch. If I paint on that clipping mask, you can paint just the lines, which is really cool. So let's say that I actually wanted these black lines to be, I don't know, somebody name something, white. So they're gonna be totally white. So I have to go into color and find white, you know, make sure that I have white selected. So that's on the right side of my color picker. And I want it to be the foreground color, so you've got to get it to change. This is not changing. Okay, now just paint those lines. Make sure you're on the clipping layer. And you can simply paint it. The only thing that's going to get painted is the black lines. It's not doing it. Notice that I can't do it. Why? I just told you a few minutes ago why that happens.
Are you not on the right layer?
Nope, that's not why. Can you see my screen? Look around, see why I can't paint.
Selection.
Thank you. Who was that, Roland?
Yeah.
Good answer. There's a selection. If there's a selection on the pink in the middle, you see the marching ants vibrating? Because of that, I can't do anything else. It's only letting me, it'll let me dump color in or paint into this area that's selected, but it won't let me do anything else. So command, you want to do deselect. Now I can paint. I should be able to paint that line. See it happening? Only, and you don't have to paint it white. It can be any color. But notice that when you go over, you want to make your brush adequately small because all the black line becomes susceptible now to color. And say, I want a really, really light yellow that's gonna kind of work with the background. So that should have changed. Actually, my background color, you need to switch it again. So I want to use the foreground color to paint with. So just make sure that you're keeping track of what colors you're using. And any of the line now can be painted. Let's say I want a kind of a green that's a little bit, a yellow that's a little bit greener. What? Go in here and say foreground. Up here, go and say, you know, click on the foreground color so it knows that you're doing a foreground. And then I can paint these. You have to be on the clipping layer. See how cool that is? And it works best if you have a Wacom tablet and you're drawing with something. But for some reason, my Wacom tablet is really slow when I'm using Zoom. So right now I'm doing this with a mouse. But I'm just showing you that this way I can paint just the lines. Now be a little bit more careful than I'm being because I'm just doing a demo. Okay, so now I have three things. I have fills, I have the lines that I can paint. Make sure you're on the right layer because you don't want, you can even lock the line layer. I think it'll still let you paint on the clipping mask, just so you don't by any chance try to paint on that layer. On the background layer, I can dump color in. So to dump color into a layer, you simply go on that layer and dump color into where you want it. So I said that I was going to have a golden yellow for my background. So notice that I have to go and start dumping color into the background. And actually it should have all selected. So maybe you want to select it with the magic wand and see, you know, if you can get bigger selection, but it should have actually let me dump color into the whole background. Yeah, so I'm now filling my background. So I've got different things going on. The fills, the lines that I can paint, and the background. And that is a demo for exercise. I'm going to finish this in front of you, work on it a little bit later so you can see it come into being a whole painting. But that is a demo for exercise 8. Questions? 2 more types of masks. Flipping mask and quick mask. Last time we did layer mask.